Hey, good day, my beautiful people. Today is Monday, April the 27th, maybe? I think that's right. And we're about to wrap up our TV unit, at least with the notes portion of it. On the last time we were together, we talked about ratings and why shows get canceled. Remember, at the end of the day, ratings are really important to TV and ad execs. They tell them two things. They tell them how many people are watching a show, and then they tell them the demographics, which is who is watching the show. And the reason that is important is that's how uh, TV execs decide how much to charge advertisers for commercial spots, and that's how advertisers decide what shows they want to be linked with. If you're ever wondering who they think the demographic is, watch the commercials. If you're seeing a bunch of truck commercials, whatever, they probably think that the demographic that they're reaching or trying to reach at least are, people who like trucks or dudes. And if it's a bunch of, feminine products or, um, clothing, it's probably geared towards women. And if it's a bunch of dumb stuff, it's probably geared towards kids. But that's just how it is. All right. So the last thing I want to talk about, I'm going to give you a bunch of reasons other than just straight ratings why shows might get canceled, and then a couple reasons why shows sometimes stay on longer than they are or should. But before we do that, I have a TV themed joke for you guys. Uh, what is the difference between someone from Dubai uh, and someone from Abu Dhabi? Anybody? People from Dubai don't like the Flintstones, but people from Abu Dhabi do. uh, oh, that's good stuff. All right. Why shows get canceled? So I've got a bunch of shows here at the top that I want to kind of key on. They're all similar in that every one of them was canceled, but for different reasons. So, got the Beverly Hillbillies. That's this one right here. We'll get to that in a minute. We've got a show called um, The X Files, which was on Fox. Very popular show. Was canceled. By the way, Beverly Hillbillies, I mentioned the other day, number one show 2 straight years, and then was canceled the following year. Why would that happen? Um, X Files, very, very highly rated show on Fox, canceled. Why? Family Guy, canceled from Fox, off the air for 3 years, came back and is still on. That's a weird one. I don't remember the name of this show, but it starred a bunch of really famous people. So this is Tim Meadows. He was on Saturday Night Live at the time. These three people are like pretty famous character actors. This woman was actually an Oscar winner. And then this is Michael Richards, who played Kramer on Seinfeld. And this is right after Seinfeld went off the air. So this show was supposed to be big, and it starred a lot of pretty famous people, and it got canceled after like 3 episodes. And then there's this show, The OC, which was a show on Fox about teenagers living in Orange County, California, and that got canceled. So we'll talk about why those things happen. So, to cancel or not to cancel, major factors in the decision making process. Number one is going to still be ratings. At the end of the day, if a show isn't pulling in really good ratings, and today a really good rating would be like a rating of an 8 or a 9, it's probably going to get canceled sooner or later because no one's watching it, and if no one's watching it, nobody's buying products from the ads that are on it, and if no one's buying products, then nobody's going to want to sponsor it. So that's still the number one reason at the end of the day, but there are other reasons. What network it's on can be a factor. So we have four major networks: CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox. And those are the big boys. Everybody else is playing in a different league than they are. And so those four major networks, if a show isn't killing it in the ratings, especially right off the bat, it could get canceled. Another show or another network, like a cable network, like Lifetime or FX or AMC, they realize they aren't playing by the same rules basically, and that they'll suck up lower ratings just because they know they're not running with the big dogs. Although that's changed recently, there've been a couple of shows on some of the cable networks that have been doing just as well as some of the shows on the regular networks. You think of Game of Thrones or Walking Dead or um, Breaking Bad. Those were shows that got just as good a ratings as shows on any other network. The night it's on. We could sit and argue all day long about what the best night for TV is. Thursday is usually a great night for comedy. Monday nights are good nights. Sunday nights are good nights. There is no debate on the two worst nights. Two worst nights of the week are by far Friday and Saturday. And why? Because no one's home. We're out, getting our groove on or doing whatever. And they know that no one is watching, or more people aren't watching on those two nights. So typically, those shows are shows that not much is expected of. Although sometimes networks will try and do, like ABC did basically a family night. I think when I was younger, I want to say that Full House was on a Friday night because they were actually trying to target families, and that with a show like that, and that's who would be home on a Friday or a Saturday would be younger families with kids. But if your favorite show gets moved to a Friday or a Saturday, you can kiss it goodbye. It's going to be canceled soon. Demographics, who is watching? That is huge. So, you go back up to the Beverly Hillbillies or the OC. Those are two good examples here. Very highly rated shows, both canceled. Why? Beverly Hillbillies, tons of people watched it, but not the right kinds of people. It was young people and old people and hillbillies. And those are groups that don't spend money on products that are being advertised. The OC was a show about teenagers. It was loved by teenage kids and one middle-aged social studies teacher in Ohio. That was not enough to keep it alive, so that show got canceled. So it's the who. A lot of times, most times, is more important than the how many part of it. Lead-in viewership is kind of interesting. So lead-in viewership is if there's a show that's like a already established hit, and then another show is on before it, and the networks realize that people are leaving the channel, changing the channel during one show and not making it back for the already established show, that show could get canceled. So here's an example. Thursday night on NBC was a go-to night for comedy in the 90s. And at one point, they had The Office, which was a huge hit, and Friends and shows like that. And they tried to introduce a show called My Name Is Earl, which I loved. It was about a dude who was down on his luck. He was basically a degenerate turd, and he hits the lottery. He gets a lotto ticket and he wins $1,000,000. And as he's leaving the store, after he buys the winning ticket, he gets hit by a car. He's in a coma. When he wakes up, he realizes he's going to make a list of all the people that he's screwed over in his life and take the money and do good. I really liked the show. It was really funny, I thought. Well, they put that on at 8 o'clock on Thursday, and then I think The Office was at 8:30, and then Parks and Rec, and then 30 Rock was on right after that. And what they found is that people would tune in at 8 to watch My Name Is Earl and didn't like it, didn't get it, and would leave and go watch American Idol or some other show on another network. And then some of them made it back to watch The Office, some of them didn't. So they ended up eventually canceling My Name Is Earl because of lead in viewership numbers. Syndication level is a fancy word for reruns. So there's a magic number in TV, and it's basically 100. If you get 100 shows in, you can pretty much sell the rights of that show to another network to run reruns and make a killing. A lot of money is made on the selling of shows for syndication. This is a reason why a show might last longer than it should. So there's a show called The Gilmore Girls, and it was okay. It was doing all right, but it had run its course, and it got to the point where the ratings weren't good enough anymore. But they had like 80 shows in the can already, and they decided to keep it going until they got to 100, and then they sold the syndication rights to Lifetime or ABC Family. So that's the reason why a show might stay on longer than maybe it should. But there's a ton of money to be made in syndication. Larry David and Jerry Seinfeld, the creators of Seinfeld, they made infinitely more money selling the rights to reruns than they did in actually making the show. Tons and tons of money. Cost. Some shows are more expensive than others. The most expensive shows to produce are science fiction shows or anything with CGI. Just to give you an example, some of you guys know the show American Horror Story. Well, in the second season of that show, they had a character played by a woman who was in her 60s, and for one of the episodes, they wanted to do a flashback and make it look like she was in her 20s or 30s. So they CGI'd it up, and it cost $8 million for one episode to make one character look 40 years younger. Uh, Lost is another great example. When Lost first aired, it was shot on location in Hawaii, which is really expensive. It had all kinds of science fiction stuff, smoke monsters and plane crashes and crap. And if that didn't kill it right out of the gate in ratings, they would have canceled it because it cost so darn much money to make. There was a show called Terra Firma that came on a couple years after Lost aired, and it was basically it was Jurassic Park on TV, and CGI dinosaurs aren't cheap. And so after 2 or 3 episodes, when that show wasn't just raking in the viewers, they pulled the plug on it because it costs too much. And then politics. Politics is another reason why a show not necessarily might get canceled, but might stay on longer. At the end of the day, money talks, and you know what walks. But there are certain names that carry more weight than others. For example, if Steven Spielberg is attached as an executive producer of anything, that show's probably going to get the benefit of the doubt because it's Steven freaking Spielberg. There are certain actors that sometimes get more of a benefit of the doubt. Robin Williams, God rest his soul, but he was on a show, and it lasted for I think 2 or 3 seasons when it probably shouldn't because Robin Williams was on it, and so they kept it on a little bit longer. Sometimes that's a reason also why shows might get canceled. There are shows where the actor does something terrible, and like Charlie Sheen on Two and a Half Men went off the deep end and just went nuts, and they ended up firing him from the show. And trying to keep the show going without Charlie Sheen just didn't work because he was the star, and so eventually that show got canceled. There's other reasons why shows could get canceled too. You go back to the X Files. The reason why this show got canceled is David Duchovny wanted to do movies, and so you can't do the X Files without Fox or Mulder. Those are the two main characters, and when one of them quits, that's it. Seinfeld, same thing. Seinfeld could still be on today if Jerry Seinfeld still wanted to do it, but he quit, and you can't have Seinfeld without Seinfeld. Now, Family Guy is a weird one. Family Guy got canceled. It was pretty raw, even back, when in the '90s when it was really raw in the '90s. They ended up canceling it, and for 3 years they replaced it with Arrested Development, which is one of my favorite shows. Well, what ended up happening is they put DVDs of Family Guy out of the original seasons, and they sold so many copies that Fox decided to throw it back on the air, and it's still on the air today. That's pretty rare, though. Once a show gets canceled, it typically it goes to die. Sometimes shows make it on other networks, get picked up on other networks, but typically, once a show gets canceled, that's it. Okay, so there it is in a nutshell. Those are why shows get canceled. There are other reasons. The death of an actor in real life, John Ritter, when he died on the set actually of Eight Simple Rules. They tried to continue the show, but you can't have that show without John Ritter, so it got canceled. But those are the main reasons. Uh, so there you go. This pretty much sums up our TV unit. We're going to be heading into film next. That'll be probably the last thing we do. Um, so I'm pretty excited about that. I love movies. I love to talk movies. So we'll be having some cool assignments dealing with that. I will see you guys tomorrow when we start our film unit. Peace out.